Greetings, students. I am delighted to have a new guest for our Voices of Search, and her name is Mei Ling Lo, and she's with us at Rutgers University. And I'm going to have her introduce herself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about why she's visiting with us. Mei Ling, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. And my name is Mei Ling Lo. I'm the science research librarian here at Rutgers. And I have been a science librarian for quite some time. And lately, my job title has changed to science research librarian because we see the need to support the faculty, especially with citation metrics and all that. So that's what I've been doing at Rutgers. And before that, I used to work at Columbia University and other libraries like Federal Reserve Bank. So I've been in this field for quite some time.
And that's exactly the reason that we're so happy to welcome you. We all have different specialties, and my students have so many different aspirations. Some of them want to be just like you. Some of them want to help researchers at a science library, an academic library. Some of them want to be in special libraries. And I wanted them to really understand what practice looks like for you, especially as it relates to working with students and faculty who are scholars, and the high stakes that are in it for some of them, and the things that they need to consider. Now, we've read a little bit about this in our textbook. I've talked a little bit about it in my lecture, but you are really a specialist, and so I'm so happy that you're going to be able to share with us about all sorts of types of metrics and the things we just discussed.
Sure. So I have prepared some slides, and I hope it's not too detailed, but if the students have any questions, feel free to ask them to contact me. Should I get started with the slides?
Absolutely. And note that the contact information, Mei Ling's email is on this slide, and I'll put it again along with the video. So great.
Yeah, my email address is very short. I think it's probably one of the shortest one of all at Rutgers. It's just mlo@rutgers.edu. And today I want to talk about bibliometrics, which is a topic that is getting a lot of attention, especially in the recent years when we are interested in a lot of topics related to assessment. So I will talk about some of the history so that you will have a background, and I will also talk about what topics that the faculty and the researchers are interested in right now. So what is bibliometrics? Is basically a topic or discipline that study the citation metrics. It comes in a variety of terms like infometrics, scientometrics, bibliometrics, webmetrics. They vary slightly from each other, but basically it's just the study using statistical methods to study the publication patterns. That's what it is. It's numbers to talk about, let's say, how often an article has been cited by other publications, or the latest trend on a particular topic. Maybe all of a sudden, flu vaccine has gotten a lot of attention, and you can see there's a peak with those articles that have been cited. So it's a very interesting topic that has drawn a lot of attention from people who study information science and also people who study statistics as well. I prefer using the words bibliometrics, so throughout this interview, you will probably hear me using the word bibliometrics a lot. Bibliometrics actually is very closely related to the librarians because we use a search technique called cited reference search. As you know, librarians always search by author, by title, or by subject keywords when we try to look for articles. And cited reference search is a technique that we use very heavily to expand our search results. So what you see right now on the screen is a paper. Let's say I have a paper here, and usually you will be able to see if there are any articles that have been cited by this particular paper. And in this particular case, I just listed 3 papers that have been cited by this particular one in the center. It's very useful because we want to know what have been written on a particular topic. But what we are more interested in is are there any other publications that have been published after the one here in the center is available to the public? So what we find out is that this paper in the center may have been cited by other papers as well. In that case, that expand our search results. We are no longer only focusing on one paper anymore. We are not only interested in what have been published before that, but more importantly, we'll be able to see what have been written after the one in the center is available. So this is a very important cited reference search technique that we use all the time. It's particularly useful in the field of science and also in the field of social sciences as well. Humanities, the cited reference search is less important. I want to talk about the history a little bit, and this is the gentleman, and his name is Eugene Garfield, and I have some students thought that he's Edison and Einstein. No, they are not the famous scientists here. However, Eugene Garfield is a very important figure in the field of information science. He was actually the founder of Science Citation Index, and Science Citation Index is using the technique that I was just telling you earlier about using cited reference search. And cited reference search is no longer just used to expand the search result. Now it's being actually used to measure the impact of an article, an author, or a journal. And it's very controversial, I have to say. So this is what it means by citation analysis. The more times that an author or an article or a journal that is being cited by another publication, the more influential or important these publications are for any given field. So it's no longer a citation analysis, which librarians use a lot all the time. You know, we want to see whether that journal is important or not. We will look at the citation analysis. If that journal gets cited a lot by other publications, we will say this is very important. We better not cancel that journal. However, other people now look at it as the research impact of that particular article, that particular author or a journal. So that is a concept that that we use all the time. And more databases like Web of Science, which used to be called Science Citation Index, Scopus, Google Scholar, and also other subject databases like MathSciNet, which is a database for mathematical literature, are using this kind of citation analysis in their database, which we are going to take a look at it very quickly in the next few minutes. Citation analysis is basically embraced by all fields here, not just the faculty, but also by all these commercial databases as well. There's a very important concept called H-index. H-index is named after this physics professor, Jorge Hirsch, and the reason it's called H is just because his last name starts with letter H, nothing fancy or anything. After that, you will probably hear other index like I index, G index, you name it, almost every alphabet, every letter in the alphabet soup will have some kind of index. But H index remains to be the most important one of all because it is probably the simplest one that can be easily understood and also can be easily calculated as well. H index is basically a score that is associated with, let's say, an author. So what does that mean if, let's say, Jane has an H index of 8? What that means is her top 8 publications have each been cited at least 8 times. Now, this is a very interesting concept, and sometimes if you are not too familiar with statistics or with mathematics, sometimes at this point you may want to pause and actually digest this a little bit or look at the chart on the left here. What that means is basically you have at least 8 publications. If you only have 3 publications, your H index will not go beyond 3. And in that case, this particular case, you have to have at least 8 publications, and each of those paper has been cited at least 8 times. Now, so H-index is actually a way to measure two things here. One is the productivity of the author, because if you only published one paper, I can guarantee you that your H-index is not going to go any higher. It also measures the impact of the author's works. So if you have written 100 papers and let's say only one paper has been cited one time, I'm sorry, don't expect your H-index to be anywhere near 100, because the index itself measures two things here, productivity and the impact. And it's a very important concept that we need to understand. So where can we get H-index? You can get it from Google Scholar. As I mentioned to you, Google Scholar remains to be the most important database that people get their H-index. The H-index in Google Scholar also tends to be inflated. It tends to be higher. And I have heard just from a conference that a university somewhere in New Jersey actually used only Google Scholar. And Google Scholar is free. There are some other databases like, ACM or in IEEE publication. These are commercial databases, but they are indexed in Google Scholar. So a lot of professors who are in the field of computer science or engineering definitely use Google Scholar all the time. There's some other databases, out there, and then people will ask, so do I have to use the library database if I can use Google Scholar? I would say Google Scholar is increasingly important, but we also have Scopus and Web of Science as well. Google Scholar does not have everything, and neither do all these databases here. So do I have to search all these databases? I would say yes. If you or your institute has access to all these resources, you should try to get hold of all these 3 databases at least. But as I said, many professors told me, Mei Ling, don't bother with the other ones. I really like my H-index in Google Scholar. It's just so much higher. I want something that is, a larger number. The larger, the better. That's how they look at it. As a librarian, I will try to convince them that you have to use the other as well, because some of the data in Google Scholar can be, duplicate, and it could also be a preprint. And in that case, you want something, really have been filtered and looked at it more carefully. So let's take a look at this one here. This is actually from Web of Science. If you search by an author, I use Richard Osgood as the author's name there, and you'll be able to see the H-index is 24 right there. And you can see the list of publications that he has and how many times each publication has been cited. This is the Scopus screen, and as you can see now, this time Scopus, because this is an engineering professor, he has published a lot in conference proceedings and all that, which are indexed more thoroughly in Scopus. His H-index has jumped from 24 in Web of Science to 54 here in Scopus. And if you look at, let me see if I can move the thing here. You can see the H-index in this case is actually 66 in Google Scholar. And that is the reason why most professors prefer Google Scholar, because the H-index is just so much better.
I wonder why there's so much variance.
Yes, what happens is Google Scholar indexes like book chapters, conference proceedings, and also preprint as well. Web of Science really did not cover book chapters too well until the last 5 or 6 years. So it also depends on the discipline as well. If you are in the field of, let's say, engineering, definitely Scopus and also Google Scholar will do a very good job. Now, if you're doing certain areas more like, let's say, agriculture, in that case, you will see the H-index would not vary so much, because Web of Science also pick up a lot of articles as well. The other thing is Scopus used to include a lot of open access articles. So if you published in a lot of open access journals, again, certain databases like Scopus or Google Scholar will tend to give you a much higher number. And that is the reason why all three databases will give you very different H index.
I see.
Okay. Now, Google Scholar also has something called I-index as well. I-index means the number of publications with at least 10 citations. So if you have someone like me who really does not publish a lot, or my publications do not get cited that often, you know, my I-index is very, very small. While you have people who may publish topics that are very, very popular, in that case, you know, their I-index will definitely tend to be higher. And as I told you earlier, we have G-index, we have I-index, all kinds of, you know, alphabet out there. But again, H-index is the most important one of all. Someone actually at Google Scholar created a profile for Albert Einstein, and this is actually Albert Einstein's H-index, and it's about 113. I also look at the professor's one, and you can also see, you know, how high it is. It's 10 right now, and I have not updated this slide, so I'm sure
that's okay.
higher as well. So the question is, we just talk about it, regardless of which database you use, the H-index remains the same for each individual author, and definitely that is false, because Google Scholar tends to have a higher, much higher citation H-index.
Gotcha.
The other thing is, people believe that H-index favor younger researchers in their early careers. In this case, this is also false as well, because most people who are at their early career, they may not have that many publications yet. Okay, so remember we talked about earlier, H-index actually measures the productivity as well. So H-index actually favors the people who have been around for some time, who have accumulated some publications. So for young researchers, H-index is not really something that favors them. Other than author impact, we also pay attention to journal impact factors as well. Journal impact factor is used very, very heavily, especially by the librarians in, I would say, late 1980s and 1990s, when we had to cancel a lot of journals, especially scientific journals, due to budget restriction. And at that time, you had to decide which journal to cancel. And how can you tell? You try to find one that is so-called least important. And so journal impact factor is used very heavily in that sense. Journal impact factor is using this formula here. I'm going to let you read this. Basically, is the number of items, the number of times that all items published in that journal in 2012 and 2013 will be the letter A at the top. It's like a fraction here. Yes. And B will be at the denominator. It's the total number of citable items. Citable items include like articles, review, proceedings. It does not include anything like letter to the editor and all that.
Yeah.
So that is very crucial as well. And let's say this is Journal Advances in Applied Mathematics, and you can see the journal impact factor is 0.904. Now, bear in mind, do not compare apple and oranges. So do not take a journal in the field of mathematics and say, I'm going to look at the journal impact factor and then compare that with, let's say, a journal in the field of medicine. It's not fair, because you should really compare math journals with, math journals. Do not compare math journals with, biology. Just like, do not compare two students' GPA if they go to different universities, because one, they may have, GPA 4.0, but maybe because the professor does tend to give out the GPA very easily. In that case, it's not fair to compare, the students' GPA if they go to two different universities. All these techniques I just want to mention, because sometimes if you decided to be a librarian in this field. These are all the small things that, you know, you just have to look out for. This is Insight Journal Citation Reports put out by Web of Science, and the company is Career Analytics. And you can see, if you look at the area, like all the math journals, you'll be able to see all the impact factors. Some of them are very high, over 4.8, and some of them could be really low as well. And this is very important, especially if some younger professors may come to you and say, should I publish in this journal? You know, in that case, you'll be able to let them know that, you know, this is the list of journal impact factor that you can take a look. There are many other ways to measure journals. Journal impact factor is the one that we use a lot, but there's also eigenfactor score, CIMAGO, Scopus Journal Analyzer, Scopus Site Score. Scopus Site Score is getting more attention these days. Journal acceptance rate is also very, very, very important. For example, Nature, which is a very important science journal, the journal acceptance rate is probably less than 10%. Another one, Journal of American Medical Association, you know, the acceptance rate is only 3.6%. So for every 100 papers that or manuscript that has been submitted to that journal, only about 3 to 4 papers actually get to be published. So journal acceptance rate also tells you how important that journal is. There's some other metrics that I would like to talk about is the metrics. It's also called the alternative metrics. Basically what it does is it talks about how some articles or some publications that have been mentioned in the social media's channel. So what are they interested in? Like Plum Analytics, they're interested in the usage. How many times the article had been downloaded, clicked, viewed, and how many times that the article or the publications has been bookmarked, have been read, have been mentioned in some blog or some posts. You know, how many times the article has been tweeted. Now, all of these are probably much more important in the field of social sciences, because let's say in the field of physics, you know, the people who wrote those articles are not a big fan of Twitter, so they're probably not going to tweet those articles anyway, but that doesn't mean that those articles are not important, right? However, in the field of social sciences, people tend to, you know, use Twitter or some other social medias more than the people in, you know, physics or mathematics. In that case, all these numbers actually mean a lot.
But, you know, it also actually could lead to more an increase in more traditional metrics. So if tweets are sending scholars to an article, they're possibly more likely to cite it because they're discovering it more quickly than they would had they waited for the journal to be published and the indexing to happen and all that stuff. So it's more immediate potential for impact. And there's also the notion of engagement, which is maybe different from research impact. So there's all those things, I think, to consider, and that are part of the altmetrics movement.
That is a very, very good point. And actually, we noticed that the younger the authors are, the more likely that they will use social media. When they publish an article that they get excited, they probably put it on Snapchat or on, you know, Twitter, or even take a picture of that article, the front page, and then show it, you know, to all their friends and all that. And you definitely have a very good point, because that actually, you know, engage with people, attract a lot of traffic, and people will say, oh, you know, you wrote something about this, you know, let's take a look at this article. So we noticed that especially people who are younger, the millennial, they tend to actually rely on the social media to get the words out. So definitely, I think I would encourage actually people who publish to make use of the social media, you know, to their advantage.
Right. especially the hashtags that other scholars in their discipline are using, because
Mm-hmm.
that will point to those other people who wrote the articles a long time ago who might discover these younger scholars or scholars who are very
Absolutely. And
young.
also, you know what, you never know, that also provides opportunities for collaboration,
Absolutely.
down the road. So I definitely, that's a very good point that you brought up. Um, what I'm showing you right now is a Scopus database. And when you have an article, this is an article by Andrew Wakefield, and talk about the anti-vaccination movement. And it's a very hot topic at one point. Should you, if you have children, should you, let them have vaccine or not? And the Plum X metrics will actually give you the numbers, how many times this article has been clicked, how many times people actually look at the abstracts, and how many times people actually read the article. Remember, just because people click on the citation doesn't mean that they actually have read it. But in this case, at least they try to download it, they can, tweet it. At least there are 31 tweets about this citation.
These are weighted then. A download, it gets more weight than
Exactly.
a click on an abstract. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at it, this is all the details that talk about the metric. Another one is called what we call the donut metric. It looks very different from the Plume Analytics. This one looks a little more like a donut, a rainbow donut, I call it. Actually, I like jelly donut, but it tends to have a lot of color. So it's a rainbow donut right here. And it's very interesting because it talks about how this article may have been cited, let's say, in patents, in Pinterest, in YouTube, or Wikipedia, or some other, social media sites that you didn't even think about that they are social media. But when you look at it, it's not just Twitter, but also, Facebook, Wikipedia, and all these kind of different channels. So it's actually very, very interesting, very rich in a way to tell you, what kind of social media that have captured the attention here. And a lot of publishers, including Wiley, Taylor and Francis, IEEE, and Springer, Nature, they all have somehow embedded this kind of rainbow donut badges into their journals. So if you publish with them, you will also see this kind of donut icon right there. Wiley, as I said, they will actually give you a score. Again, it's very controversial when people get upset and say, how come you label me with a number, but this is how the game is being played.
And it's probably a little threatening to what we call the old boy network, although I'm not sure it's all old boys at the university, because if the game changes, they don't necessarily have a stake in the new game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very controversial because I have some professors who, as you said, have been in this academia for quite some time, and they're very resistant. They were like, are you trying to associate me as a number? Are you saying that if I have a number of 4, that I'm less important than, the fellow next door who get a number of 6, and also if I get a donut, a metric here that only mainly is blue color. That means I only
not very much variety there.
Does that mean that my article is less important than, my coworker down the hall who received this rainbow donut, that got all kinds of colors? So it's just very controversial. And so I think that also reminds us who are librarians or who are people in this field that when we have this kind of discussion, we have to be very sensitive. Okay, we are not trying to tell people you should do this or do not do this, but we have to be very sensitive. And I think not many people understand that, and they get.
And I also think there's a level of understanding that we develop as we work with not only our users, but the technologies themselves. So for instance, if Reddit is a completely different social media platform than some of the others, and it makes sense that folks who are working in technology and possibly science are going to be noted more heavily in Reddit. in some field, for some fields. So it makes sense that you'd be more pink or more blue or more purple, depending upon what you were doing and who your real audience is.
That's excellent point, and that is why people have to understand that they cannot say, oh, how come yours is really more like blue while the other one is, more colorful. And you definitely have a very good point about that. So let's move on. The other question that I always get asked is, how to boost my citation counts. I get asked this question a lot. And if you Google this topic, there are many, 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 sites that talk about this. I'm not trying to encourage people to manipulate this kind of citation counts, but I do encourage people to understand how this game works. What does that mean if somebody, actually citation count is a lot more than the other? What are some of the reasons or factors behind it?
And I think that the fact that you're even bringing it up points to the notion that librarians are asked for advice on this front, and we need to have the conversations with our users about this. So this is one thing, if you're going to be an academic librarian, you might want to be prepared to address or think about.
Absolutely, especially when we have workshops or webinars. After we do that, people will always ask, can you give me some advice here? We have a lot of international scholars, so the first thing that, especially for women, they have to understand that you have to use your name very consistently. If you get married, if you change your name, make sure that you have a way to, tie the record together.
I bet you have some strategies for that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Use very standardized institutional affiliation, even for Rutgers. Don't just use Rutgers one day and then use Rutgers University the next day and then use Rutgers the State University of New Jersey, the day after. Try to have a very standardized institutional affiliation. We are actually at Rutgers, we are making an effort to standardize all our institutional affiliation as well. So we are working on it, but as an author, I think people can also do their part. Try to publish journal in high impact factor if possible. If you can publish an article in Nature, definitely go for it. But I also understand the competition is very strong out there. But if you can, try to look up the impact factor of the journal. The other thing is also if you have a professional web pages, a lot of departments do. I know you have one as well. Try to make sure that you get that web page up to date. You don't have to look at it every single day or every single week, but I would say at least once or twice per semester, take a look at that web page, make sure that your biography or your list of citations is up to date. Also, this is where you want to, have a very solid profile out there on the internet. If possible, join ResearchGate, Academia EDU, LinkedIn, Google citation, and all that. It's very important that you have a presence there, whether you like those sites or not, but make sure that you are actually out there on this kind of important sites. Also, if you want, you can publish with open access articles that has been studied that show that people's articles who are open access tend to increase the citation rate. I'm not surprised by that because if the article is more readily available, people will be able to just click and be able to read that first page of the article. Of course, it will increase the citation rate. Team author articles also get cited more. That's the study. If you have two other co-workers who can actually publish articles with you, go for it. The only problem is, are you the first author or are you the last author? That is something that you may have to discuss with your partners and your team. But study has also shown that team author articles also tend to get cited a lot more. Write comprehensive and substantial review articles because when people cite articles, they try to cite one article that talk about, let's say, what has happened on this particular topic in the last 24 months. Instead of trying to read 3 other articles, actually, about the same topic. So a review article also tends to be cited a lot more than a regular article. This is where I would like to talk about how to manage your research identity. Remember, we talked about people may have changed their names, or they may have a spelling that of their name that is very, very common. Let's, take my name as an example. Mei Ling Lo is a very common name. Okay, there are at least half dozen of Mei Ling in the world of academia. So it's very important for us to actually have a Google Scholar citation profile so I can distinguish myself from another individual. To have an ORCID ID, I have listed 2 sites here where people can actually create an ORCID ID. You can also create an ORCID ID through our library website. In that case, you will have your net ID, Rutgers net ID associated with ORCID ID, and you don't have to remember so many username and password and all that. Researcher ID is another one that is put up by Web of Science. I definitely encourage people to have one as well if you publish a lot of articles. I know that it's very, very time consuming to have so many profile on the web and all that, but let me tell you, it's worth the effort. You just don't want people to claim your work, right? You spend a lot of time writing that paper. You don't want to say another Mei Ling Lo somewhere out there who decided that, you know what, I like this paper, I'm going to just list it under my name. You want to make sure that, right.
You're less lucky. Like there is only one other Joyce Valenza that I know who's working in academics. Unfortunately, she's also in New Jersey and she's also a doctorate. However, there's just one.
Just one? You're lucky.
I know I'm lucky, but
you met her?
I think it's important for our students even because they're starting careers to go in and claim your name in some of these things, especially if your name is John Smith. It's too late, but get in there and claim your identity.
Right. I think, especially for young scholars, I encourage them to do it now, not later. Because if I have a professor who has published with his postdoc and research fellows and all that. He has over 300 publications. I'm telling you, one time I have to help him to build a profile. I'm like, okay, now we are having some serious problem here. So it's much easier when you just do it, at the very beginning.
Absolutely.
So I have one more topic to talk about. This is PUA. This is called Research with Rutgers. And this is a database that was actually paid for by the state of New Jersey. And it has records of mainly the STEM professors and also, some teaching faculty who have received grants as well. And this is actually a database funded by the state of New Jersey using a software called PUA. Right now in the state of New Jersey, we have 5 universities, including Rutgers, that have access to this software. The reason I want to bring this up is that PUA is getting a lot more attention, and because a lot of administrators are trying to find a way to better organize the research publications and also, works that are done by the professors. So I'm sure for your students, in the near future, they will hear about this a lot more, and that's why I want to bring this up and make sure that, by the time they find a job out there, they will not be totally surprised about this product. What it does is it tells you what other people are actually working in the same area. Just so you know, Scopus is actually behind this product called PUA. Is actually by the same company called Elsevier. And so whatever data, whatever articles that you can find in Scopus will also appear in PUA. So I'm going to use Professor Copeland as an example here, and let's take a look at his profile right here. And you can see, this is the list of his publication, and all the publication that he has will also has the bibliometrics badges right there. You will see the, the donut badge right there. And you can probably see for science, many of them are just the plain, boring blue donut, not as colorful as the other areas. And if you look at some of these articles, you want to find out exactly what that means by the Plum X matrix, it will tell you more. So this is another screen capture that I have here.
Oh, that's mine.
Right, exactly. I try not to highlight it too much. For those of the students who are interested in this field, I just want you to know that there are many job opportunities out there, and usually the job title will have the word research metrics somewhere in the job title. And it will, if you're interested in applying for this kind of job, you will notice that these kind of jobs are also associated with science as well. You will probably notice that, and it's really a fun area to work in. This is another one that trying to look for metrics librarian as well.
Mei Ling, when students come out of school, do you find them like right out of library school? Do you find them ready to perform the type of advice and analytics that has become part of your day-to-day work, or do they need on-the-job training?
They need some kind of on-job training. What happens is we actually have a library school intern now work at a library that does a lot of research metrics, and her daily job is more like collecting the data, running, Excel spreadsheet. I would say more, technical stuff. She is not asked to go out to do any outreach or contact the faculty or anything like that. However, you need to build that knowledge. You need to build that, technical expertise before you can actually reach out to the faculty. So yeah, I would say the first a year or two could be a little bit mundane, because you spend a lot of time in front of the computer, trying to key in the number, using the software, running all this formula. But as you spend more time doing it, you accumulate the knowledge, there will be opportunities for you to, work directly with the professors and the administrators. But the first 2 years, yeah, I agree. Probably, nobody wants, a new person to come in and say, please go and talk to the faculty about H index.
Right.
At sure the director will be
have our students now will have a little background, and they'll know that they need to explore further on their own if they want to pursue that type of work.
Absolutely. And the best thing to do is, number one, this is the screen that exactly what you're asking right now. If you're interested in this topic, you can go to this website. You can subscribe to the listserv or read some of the blogs. And also, if you're interested in it, try to contact some science librarians and maybe be an intern for them, or work on a special project, so that you will be able to build a resume that is not just, a list of traditional librarian duties, but something that are more towards this kind of citation metrics.
I think that's a great idea, and it's very doable. Our students can take an internship, so that's a wonderful opportunity for somebody to pursue.
Absolutely. Yeah. But this is the slide if they're interested in this topic.
Excellent.
The other thing I want to talk about, because we also talk about the research metrics, is very controversial. And so there's a movement right now. It's called Responsible Metrics Movement. It's trying to remind people to use the metrics in a very responsible way. Just like I told you earlier, are you trying to evaluate me because I have the H index of 4, while you may have an H index of 13? Does that mean that your publications are a lot more important than mine? Well, the problem is we may even work in a very different field, and in that case, it may not be fair to compare apple and oranges, right? So this is what the responsible metrics movement is all about, is for people to really take a look at this statement. Like this, DORA is one of the earlier one, is called Declaration on Research Assessment. and it has a lot of interesting statement that reminds people to use this kind of metrics more carefully. Another one is the Leiden Manifesto, and it's based on an article that was accepted by Nature. It's a very interesting article, by the way. If whoever is interested in this topic, I would encourage him or her to read this article. And this manifesto put forward 10 principles to guide this kind of quantitative research. And it really makes, and to be honest with you, every now and then I get bored, I will try to take out these 10 principles to really remind myself, because as an information professional, I have to make sure that whatever I do, I will also respect this kind of guideline as well.
Thank you.
So there's some trends out there which I talk about. The department, the funding agency, they always demand evidence about the importance of an article, and that is the reason why bibliometrics has gotten a lot of attention in the recent years. And also the tenure, the promotion, decisions, and all that. People want to have some kind of numbers to see what is going on. So whether we like it or not, I think this kind of assessment is here to stay. But again, we have to remind ourselves that we have to use all this kind of citation analysis very, very carefully.
There's one more, I know we're just closing, but there's one more thing I wanted to just note. Having sat at reference desks and worked with grad students a lot, grad students in their papers, and to some degree undergrads, want to put papers in those works cited lists that their professors are going to respect. And so for those people also, understanding the ranking of the various different journals and the disciplines is important, because there are journals in a subject somebody's researching that may be very much respected, and a professor will go, aha, that young person has done some extra legwork or thought more carefully or critically about what they're including as their sources.
Yep, that's absolutely a very good point. Don't just take whatever you have in front of you, and really think about who are the people who wrote this article, where did they publish? Because that's one thing that we did not talk about here in this interview is about peer review process. Yeah. I still value that process a lot. I know that we are trying to shy away from that with open access or with other preprint repository. But the peer review process is a very important process, because the people who get to review the articles are actually the people expert in the field. Okay, so let's say if you have an article about the flu vaccination, for example, you're not gonna hire me to review that article, because I know nothing about the vaccinations. However, if you hire or ask a medical doctor or someone who actually works in the field, they are the experts, and in that case, their comments actually make a lot of sense. Now, having said that, I'm not saying that peer review process is has no problem and all that. It has its own issues, but peer review process guarantees to a great extent that the articles that you read have gone through a very vigorous review process. So I think we need to understand that.
I do think we're seeing some shift also with the open access journals getting more serious about peer review, and people who do peer review for journals like Elsevier don't get paid very much at all. And so I don't feel completely compelled to do peer review for a respected journal myself, because I get very little out of that effort. And, there are folks who are beginning to say, well, why shouldn't I support a fledgling open access journal that wants to get serious about peer review? So I'm thinking we're right at the beginning of this shift.
Yes,
we may see something. But I know I've taken so much of your time, and I am so grateful.
Right.
Final words of advice? Any final words of advice for my students? You've given us so much.
I would say if you're interested in this field, feel free to talk to me or any science librarian. And definitely, an internship is always a very good opportunity for people to explore what is out there. And also an internship also give them a chance to say whether you like it or not. And then you may think this is an interesting topic, but by the time you actually have to work on it and look at all the Excel spreadsheet, you will like, maybe that's not my cup of tea. So
Yeah.
I would say it all depends, and but definitely try to explore, different opportunities. I must say, librarianship really, really has changed a lot in the last 10 years. This is something that even when I was in the library school, never had imagined, the richness of this kind of information explosion and the databases and everything. It's just,
There's never been a better time to be a librarian in my
yeah,
mind.
it just has changed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what happened is maybe we will not be called librarians anymore in 5 years. But the thing is, somebody still has to be out there, I don't know, working on the information. And I still
And I
think
think
we have information professionals out there.
leading in some ways. Really, I mean, I think librarians are behind a lot of these new metrics or criticizing them and making them better, as well as behind the open access movement. So,
I definitely, I believe that. I mean, one of the citation metrics thing that we were talking about is actually really pushed a lot by NIH, the National Institute of Health. And guess who were behind the NIH? The librarians. They are the one who are actually doing a lot of statistics. They are the one who actually will have conference every year trying to, share the information with their peer like us. I think, librarians are really at the forefront in this movement.
thank you. I'm going to stop recording now, but that doesn't mean my friends in the class should say goodbye to Mei Ling forever. So please take her up on the offer of a good contact, and also please write and thank her. So it's been a pleasure. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay, thank you. Bye.